So we have been discussing about the incentive system theory, which is a theory of farm by accident because it was not meant to be rationalize the existence of farm as an organization, but it was trying to solve the principal agent problem, which is very pertinent with respect to an organization. And as a result, it became also another theory of farm in terms of how actually solve the agency problem within the organization. So what sort of incentive contracts are optimal in such scenarios. So those are discussed in this particular uh, school of thought. So you have done some amount of principal agent model in your game theory. So one classic example and one of the oldest example is the sharecropping that you have also done, where there's a landlord who is a principal and then the tenant is an agent, and we try to solve the problem in the presence of adverse selects. Okay. Similarly, we can think of for any farm, the shareholders as the principal and they are the true owner, and then CEOs who actually calls all the shots and take most of the decisions in terms of day-to-day running of the business. It exerts effort in order to achieve certain output and all. So CEOs are treated as agent. Okay. So apart from this simple one principal, one agent setup, we also we also know that there exists a literature which is about different layers of principals agent. So principal, supervisor, and agent is that this is the 3 layers, and you can increase these number of layers and look for the optimal contract in such a scenario. Okay. So the idea of these many layers are that there are hierarchies in terms of those agents, and then the higher agents will try to typically get some work done by the lower agents, and that's how they will act as either monitor or supervisor, and that's how the entire chain of this principal agent can be expanded. Okay. So that's the main idea of this principal agent theory. So in the context of farm as an organization, the incentive system theory talks about the multitask principal agent problem, where within the organization there can be many different tasks and the same agent is going to do that. And when this kind of multitask principal agent problem arises, there are ways to solve it. So we'll be focusing on that, and then finally we'll try to relate it with the make or buy decision of the farm, and so that this principal agent model can be used in that setup to develop a simple theory of make or buy decision. Okay. So let us begin with a very simple incentive contracting problem. So this is related to pay for performance. So essentially we'll try to reward the agent based on its performance, which would be to some extent observable to the principal, and based on that some reward scheme will be given. So first imagine that principal, there is a production function, and that production function is y, which is equal to a plus epsilon. Epsilon is the uncertainty term, noise term, and a is the action that is put in by the agent. Okay. And now there is a contract with the agent in terms of its reward scheme, and we call it, say, W equal to S plus BY. This is a simple linear contract with respect to the output that is generated by the agent, and S is the fixed component of that payment. Okay. And we are not saying anything right now in terms of whether S can be positive or negative. B is the bonus component, which is dependent on the amount of Y that is produced. Okay. Now, these are linear contracts that are given to the agent in terms of this linearity with respect to the outcome variable, that is Y. Okay. So now the principal's payoff will be this pi, which is equal to y minus w. W is the reward that is going to the agent, and essentially principal will try to maximize this expected profit, and we are assuming that epsilon term will have expectation equal to 0, that noise term. Okay, so we'll be essentially working with simple algebra with all the noise terms will be in the expectation will be equal to 0. So now look at the agent's utility function. Now agent is getting the reward, which is W, which is based on some output, minus the cost of exerting or cost of taking the action. So CA, okay, so W minus CA is the agent's utility function. Okay, now we have to look into, so this is the cost function which is taken to be convex in order to find that there will exist some interior solution to this action choice by the principal. So this is the cost function. Okay. Now timing of the events are depicted in the following manner. So the principal and agent sign a compensation contract, which is W equal to S plus BY, and S is the fixed component and B is the bonus component. Now the agent chooses an action A, but the principal cannot observe this choice. Okay, so this action is not observable to the principal. Now event beyond agent's control is the uncertainty term epsilon, and that occurs after this stage. Okay, now together with the action and noise will determine the amount of output that is generated Y, which is A plus epsilon as we have defined. Now output is observed by the principal and the agent and by a court if necessary. Okay. Now the agent receives the compensation specified by the contract. Okay. So now we will be trying to analyze this problem. So imagine that your cost CA is given by that, and so the agent will maximize its own payoff. And what is this payoff? Payoff will be this S plus BA, because if you remember Y equal to A plus epsilon, and we are thinking that expectation of epsilon will be equal to 0. So in expected sense, S plus BA minus CA will be what the agent will try to maximize by choosing the action A. Okay. So when you try to, when the agent tries to maximize this with the choice of A, now what would be your the solution to this problem from the first order condition? Okay, so it will be B equal to C dash A. Okay, and now let us also try to introduce another the explicit form of the cost function, and we take that as convex cost function, which is quadratic, so half A square. Okay, so if that is the situation, then you know that what would be your optimal choice from this. So S plus BA minus half A square, and you try to maximize with respect to A, and then that will give you your optimal choice of action. Okay. And in that case, what you will find that the slope of the cost functions will be equated with the slope of the reward function, that is B. Okay. And so essentially this is the payments that is going to the agent, and this is the cost function. So the maximization will occur when is the difference is the maximum, and that happens when this is a parallel line which is tangential to this cost function. Okay, so A star B will be the optimal level of action chosen by the agent. Okay, so now look at the interesting possibility. Now if B goes up, so if B goes up, then you know that this slope of this line will be steeper. Now as soon as this becomes steeper, then correspondingly the parallel line which will be tangential to CA will be towards the right of A star B. Okay, so in other words, if you want to elicit more effort or action from the agent, then you can do that by simply increasing the bonus component B. Okay, However, the problem with that, we know to some extent that if we have this kind of steeper slope, which will create stronger incentives, but steeper slope means that the agent's reward is too much dependent on the outcome. Now, outcome is itself an the uncertain variable because of the noise term that is there. So in other words, you can give very steep incentive scheme to the agent, but that would load the risk in the contract for the agent. So as a result, if the agent is risk-averse, so that will essentially mean that you have to give too much to incentivize, okay, because of the risk aversion of the agent, okay. So if you want to give a stronger incentive by choosing steeper slope, that is steeper bonus, then that is going to happen, okay. So now this is for a simple principal agent problem, but this same problem can be extended to your typical wholesaler and retailer or the franchisee contract, where you can see that your S is essentially the fixed franchise fee, and in fact you can put S less than 0, which would be the payment from the agent side to the principal. So that would be in terms of a franchise fee to the wholesaler from the retailer, okay? And in that case, what B can be very near to 1. So that means you allow the agents to enjoy the sales or the outcome that is produced by this action of the agent, okay? But you take something upfront. But this kind of contract has the problem that asking for too much franchise fee means that the agent may be finance constraint or credit constraint. So in that case, upfront, this kind of S less than 0 contract might have limitations, okay? So that's an important way to think about it, that your S negative is also not a very good idea. By increasing B, you can definitely put S negative, and that would also do the trick, but that would imply something, that agent is taking too much of risk, bearing too much of risk, and that may not be good if the agent is risk-averse, okay? So this particular simple problem tells us that how you actually can manipulate this bonus component to actually improve the outcome in the form of more action to be chosen, okay? But the problem arises that you might need to adjust your S in order to have the participation constraint satisfied, and as a result, that may not be a very good situation in all economic environment, especially in a situation where you have agents who are risk averse, okay? Now we try to take this particular simple principal agent problem to something where we do not see this Y and we cannot write a contract on the outcome Y, okay? So in other words, we have seen that Y is A plus epsilon, A is what the agent chooses. So as a result, Y, based on Y, we could write a contract which was S plus BY. But now, instead of that Y on which we tried to write some contract earlier, but it might be possible that no contract can be written on Y. So this is due to variety of reasons. One possibility, this is in the spirit of incomplete contract. So you cannot directly make your contract contingent on the outcome variable Y, okay? But instead, there can be some performance measures. So in other words, that you can think of that how hard the agent is working, and then you can think that that is observable, okay? But finally, the outcome, since it depends on the uncertainty parameter also, and it is not possible to understand that, so basically come to an agreement with respect to writing a contract on Y, but maybe some performance might be observable to both parties, and in that case, the contract is not written on Y, but it is written on some performance measure P. Okay. So this is the new contract, and why this is happening? Because there might be limitations on writing contract on the outcome variable directly. That is why. Okay. So now take a very simple example that your outcome was Y, which was A plus epsilon, and your performance, which is observed, is P, but that P is equal to A plus phi. Okay. Now again, we are assuming that expectation of epsilon is 0, expectation of phi is 0. So in other words, that Y and P, these are two different indicators that we are able to see, but no contract can be written on Y, but instead we can write a contract on P, but P is not a direct measure of Y because of the uncertainty term is there, and also what the outcome Y is realized is not going to be the same that P is realized. Okay, so this P is different. Yeah, so there is a question.
So
Yes.
So what is the benefit of using P over Y if even P has
No,
an uncertainty factor?
No, it is not a benefit. Simply that we cannot write contract on Y. Okay. So to give you a very simple example, all of you are working, and suppose I am your hostel warden. I can see how much you are working, but I know that your final outcome, that is your final performance in the exam, is not directly related to the amount of work that you are putting in, because there are other uncertainties involved. Okay. So I am not making contingent on that exam results for all the rewards that I would like to give you. Okay. But instead, I'm looking at some other performance criteria which is observable. So both parties are able to observe that performance criteria on which they are able to write contract, but they are not able to write contract on the outcome variable which is of interest for the principal. So is it clear?
Yes.
Okay. So remember that not all variables are equally contractable because of plenty of problems, and we have already discussed some of the problems where the incompleteness of contract is involved. So the quality might be issues, there might be too many contingencies, and there might be problem of third-party verification of these Y. So all these things are problematic. So as a result, imagine that no contract can be written on the outcome variable directly. Okay, but instead some other performance measure can be can be observed, and then based on that performance measure, both parties can come to a contract. Okay. So now imagine that we are just extending our model to a little bit by imagining that it is not one action, but there can be multiple actions. Okay. And this is where we are introducing the multitask agency problem, that since the agent not only takes one particular action, but it takes many actions. Okay. And many actions, to give you one example, is that you are working in a factory. Not only you are working hard to produce more, but you are also taking care of the machine. Okay. So that could be your second action. So basically by that second action, you are just making overall outcome for the principal, and that is affected by your A1 and A2 actions. Okay. So sorry, excuse me. So imagine that your output Y, so principal is interested in this output Y. Now what is this output? Could be that not only the physical output may be that you are generating by choosing an action A1, but maybe by choosing another action A2. Okay. So these are the combinations, and which finally gives rise to your output. But on the other hand, you observe only one action in the performance measurement. Okay. So when you try to measure the performance, you can only observe action A1. Okay. So now you can see that your output, that is A1 plus A2, but your performance on which you are able to write the contract only captures the action A1. Okay. So a contract based on P cannot create full incentives for A2, because you can imagine that P equal to A1. So whatever bonus component you impose, that is S plus BP, and that BP, P captures only A1. So by increasing B, you can actually induce the agent to choose more of action A1. Okay. But that is not going to help the principal totally, because principal's overall interest is A1 plus A2. Is that point clear? Okay. So by simply giving a contract based on P, in this particular situation, you would not be able to, maximize the principal's output. Okay, output, or in this particular context, it may not be necessarily output, but it is a variable of interest for the principal. Okay, maybe the overall value of the firm that it is interested in maximizing, which is a combination of not only the profit but something else also. Okay, and that something else is also given by the choice of actions by the agent. Okay, so is it clear? So this particular context, you can understand that the writing contract on P is not going to incentivize properly. Okay. Now think of another example, Y equal to A1, but the performance that you are able to measure is a combination of A1 plus A2. Okay. Then again, a contract based on P creates an incentive for the agent to take action A2, even though A2 has no relevance for the principal's overall interest in the outcome variable Y. Okay, because principal is only interested in Y, and that is dependent on A1. Okay, but if you write a contract based on P, then you know that you are actually incentivizing both A1 and A2, where A2 is of no consequence. Okay, for the principal. Okay, so this is how that we, as soon as we introduce multitask principal agency problem, our incentivization of the principal becomes very complicated. Okay, and an extreme case, you can see that suppose Y equal to A1 plus epsilon, that's where the principal is interested in, but the performance that you are measuring is A2 plus phi. Okay, now any attempt to incentivize in this situation makes no sense, because incentivizing by choosing some kind of B positive is essentially will increase the choice of A2, but that A2 has no relevance for Y. Okay, so is it clear? Is it clear?
So can you explain the last case here? Like when we are saying
last case, look at that principal's outcome variable that it is interested in is A1 plus epsilon. Okay, and the performance that can be measured is A2 plus phi with some bit of noise term phi, and we are assuming all these noise terms have expectations which is equal to 0. Now A2 plus phi. Okay, so now if you try to incentivize through your B choice, then what you will be incentivizing? You will be incentivizing the agent to choose more A2, right? By choosing B, which is steeper. But A2 has no relevance for Y, because A2 doesn't contribute anything to the outcome Y. Okay, so here, giving any incentive to the agent based on the performance measure P is essentially useless. Yeah, any question? Any question do you have? No? Okay. So now we extend the model a little bit, and now our output is also dependent on A1, A2, but not directly by with some factor F1, A1 plus F2, A2 plus epsilon, okay? But the performance that can be measured is G1, A1 plus G2, A2 plus phi, okay? So these F1 and F2 are basically some numbers. G1 and G2 are also some numbers, okay? So here, outcome Y is dependent on A1 and A2, but that dependency of Y on A1, A2 is very different from the performance measure P that is dependent on A1 and A2, because the factors there are G1 and G2. Is it clear? So I am not able to observe this term F1, A1 plus F2, A2, how much is the total, but I am able to see some performance which is essentially a linear outcome of G1, A1 plus G2, A2, where A1 and A2 are the choices made by the agent, okay? So we have output function based on actions, we have performance that can be measured is based on actions, but this is a different function, okay? Now we are thinking of giving a contract to the agent in terms of W equal to S plus BP, okay? And we'll try to find out what would be the best way to award the contract in this multitask principal agent problem, okay? So now look at the profit. Profit is Y minus W. Similarly, utility is W minus cost, okay? And we are assuming that cost is basically additively separable, so half A1 square plus half A2 square. So essentially, this is the cost. So here the important omission is that A1 and A2 are both chosen by agent, and so choosing A1 might have some kind of effect on not changing the marginal cost of A2, but that thing we are not capturing here, okay? So we are simply taking them additively separable as to actions A1 and A2 that is giving rise to the cost for this agent, okay? So we are just keeping it additively separable, but a more kind of interesting model would be that whereby if you say choose more of one action, then that will affect the marginal cost of the other action, okay? Now again, we'll be considering the similar timeline for the game between the principal and the agent. So first period, they sign a compensation contract, which is based on the performance P, and then agent will be choosing A1 and A2, and principal cannot observe these A1 and A2 choices. It will only be able to observe some combination, that is G1, A1 plus G2, A2 plus phi. That's the performance that the principal will be able to observe, okay? And events beyond agent's control, that is epsilon and phi, those uncertainty parameters will be realized, and we have already assumed that expectation of that will be equal to 0. Now, the actions and determine the agent's total contribution to firm value Y and measure performance P. Okay, so A1 and A2 are actually generating Y and P. Okay, but only P is observable, and based on which the contract can be written by the principal with the agent. Okay. Now, this performance measurement is observed not only by the principal and the agent, that's why contract is feasible here, and also if necessary by a court. Okay, so that's where the contract is written, because if it is not verifiable by the court, then no contract can be written on those parameters, okay, which are not observable to the court, because it has to be verified. So now, what would be the problem of the agent? Agent will try to maximize his expected reward minus the cost of taking these two actions. So it will be trying to maximize by choosing A1 and A2, S plus BP, and P is G1, A1 plus G2, A2. And since we are doing maximization in expected sense, and we have assumed that the expectation of that phi term is essentially 0. So this is the term that will have to be maximized. Now, when you do that, you will be getting from your first order condition the two choices of actions, A1 star, which will be G1B, and A2 star, which will be J2B. And both are functions of the bonus component of the contract D. Okay. So, sorry. So the bonus has effect on the choices of actions. Okay. So this is similar to what we have actually generated, but now we have multi-task, and accordingly the two tasks are of different costs, and that is happening. Now, expected profit that has to be maximized by the principal. Now, what would be the expected profit? It is the Y minus W. Now, Y, we know that it is F1A1 plus F2A2. Okay. And what is the W? W is S plus BP. Okay. So this has to be maximized. Now, this has to be maximized keeping in view that A1 and A2, these optimal values will be determined from this equation. Okay. So that there is a relation between how much bonus component is chosen. Accordingly, the agent based on that bonus choice in the contract will be exerting two different actions. So G1B and G2B will be generated. Okay. So that particular feedback effect, that if I choose B, I know what would be my A1 star B. Okay. Similarly, if I choose B, I know what would be my A2 star B, and this will give me my expected profit, me being the principal. Okay. So now what do? I also know that expected utility of the agent will be the expected contract reward minus the cost. Okay. Now, remember one interesting thing, that we have taken our contract, which is S plus BP. Okay. Now, if I look at what would be the total surplus, the surplus that is enjoyed by the principal and the surplus that is enjoyed by the agent, the total surplus will be if I just add these two terms. Okay. So in other words, if I maximize this pi plus U, okay, so then I will have the two term will be added, and then my target of maximization will be with respect to choosing B, and then with that I am able to maximize the overall surplus in this relationship. Now, there is a conflict of interest between the principal and the agent, but the advantage is that I have a fixed amount S that is there in the contract. So I choose B so that my overall surplus in the society is maximized, but I would be accordingly choosing my S so that the agents will be pushed to the participation constants, that is its reservation payoff. Okay. So the entire surplus will be finally enjoyed by the principal. So if you add these two terms, you know that this has component W and this has component W in the first part. So these two will vanish. Okay. So they are same terms. So they will go out. So now you will be left with only this much amount, which will be the outcome that the principal is interested in, and the agent's cost that is there. Okay. So this will be the overall surplus that has to be maximized by choosing my B. Okay. And I know that if I choose B, these will be my choices of actions. Okay. So now plugging these values, I will be able to generate. So this will be my total surplus that has to be maximized. Now, if I just choose B to maximize these, and also I just plug in the values of A1 star B and A2 star B from the agent's maximization problem, then my B star will be, you can easily see here, A1 star B was G1 B, right? So if you look at here, it was G1B. So your expression is becoming F1 G1B plus F2 G2B minus half G1. square b square minus g2 square minus half g2 square b square. Okay. So now when you maximize by choosing b, there is a simple equation. So your b star will be then accordingly f1 g1 plus f2 g2 divided by g1 square plus g2 square. Okay. So that would be my optimal b star. Okay. Now if I use this very simple diagram about the f vector, that is f1 and f2 being the component, and g vector g1 and g2 being the component, then I will be able to draw a picture like this. And what are these pictures? F vector is related to my outcome variable y. Okay. G vector is related to my performance variable p. Okay. So now f and g are the two vectors, and here it is taken that any combination is possible. Here it is taken that f1 is less than g1 and f2 is greater than g2. So that's why the vector f is this and the vector g is this. Okay. Now there are many possibilities between this f-g vector. One possibility is that f and g, they overlap in the sense that f just completely lie on g. What does that mean? That means that I am able to observe performance, okay, but I do not observe the outcome y. But the performance measurement is totally related to the outcome variable because f is also lying on this ray. Okay, doesn't matter whether f is small or very large. Okay, going beyond. Okay. But what is important that these two things are aligned, G and F. Okay. So this is called, one important aspect of this is that the F and G and the angle between them, theta, is essentially the situation that how F and G are aligned. That means I am able to observe something, how far that observation is helping me in terms of my final outcome variable. Now, if f and g, they lie on each other, so that means that even if I don't observe my outcome, y, because I do not observe my f components, but since they are aligned, so simply by incentivizing based on the performance, I'll be able to maximize the output. Okay. So this f and g, the length of them is essentially, okay, I need another expression. So the length of them is essentially, they measure the scale, and the angle between f and g, they measure the alignment. Okay. So now from this particular expression and with the help of this diagram with theta here, you can easily, if you are good in your geometry, you are able to show that my b star will be this root over f1 square plus f2 square by root over g1 square by g2 square cos theta. Okay. So this is possible by using some Pythagoras theorem and the properties of the triangle. Okay. So the interesting thing is that now this f1 square plus f2 square root over that is nothing but the length of the f vector. Similarly, the denominator is the length of the g vector. Okay. And cos theta is the angle between these two vectors f and g. Okay. Now I have to check that how should I incentivize the agent. Now, as I was telling you that suppose it is the case that f1 and f2 are such that the angle theta vanishes. So basically f lies on g. So if the angle theta vanishes, then the cos theta of that zero angle will be how much? 1, right? Cos 0 equal to 1. Okay. So this component becomes 1, and then your bonus component should be essentially the ratio of these two vectors. Okay. A vector and g vector. That's how you should incentivize the agent. Okay. Now, on the other hand, imagine that your a vector and g vectors are such that the angle between them is actually 90 degrees. So cos 90 will be equal to 0. So that means that a vector and g vector, they are orthogonal to each other. and as a result, this cos theta is equal to 0, and as a result, your bonus component should be 0, which means that since performance is orthogonal to the outcome variable, so if I write a contract on the performance which does not in any way help me in terms of achieving a better outcome variable, then it is useless to incentivize based on the performance. So in that case, you should give a flat wage S, okay, and B component, the bonus component, should be equal to 0. Is it clear? Okay. This particular derivation is very easy. You try to do it. In case you can't, somebody or the other will be able to do it. This is very simple following from this algebra. Okay. Sorry, following from this diagram. Okay. So is it clear that B should be very small when the performance and the outcome vectors? So basically these two vectors which are essentially linking the actions to the performance and the output, okay, based on the actions. If they are orthogonal, then you do not need to give any bonus. So as essentially what I observe as performance is not at all any signal of the outcome that I will be getting or the output that I will be getting. Okay. So it is completely useless to give any kind of bonus in such a context. So you essentially observe flat wage payment. So many of the organizations you will see that they essentially give flat wage, okay, because of the simple reason that performance are very difficult to measure for them, and whatever performance that is observed may not have any link with the outcome. Okay, that's the situation of this orthogonal between these two vectors. Okay, clear? Okay, so these are some of the special cases that are discussed. I have already. So if y equal to a1 plus epsilon and p equal to a2 plus epsilon, you can easily see that this is a situation that your basically the a vector and the g vector will be completely orthogonal. Okay, so as a result of that, there is no point giving any incentive based on performance, because that will only incentivize a2. And that A2 has no impact on Y. Okay. So these are again the re-examination of this. Okay. So now I will take this particular simple theory to a theory of organization where I will be trying to use this theory to develop a make or buy situation. Okay. So let me just go to another screen. So now if I share, okay. So now you have already seen that what we have done essentially, that Y was there and then performance was there. Okay. And then we have developed a theory of how the incentive should be given. Okay. Now let us try to transform this agency problem to a theory of the firm by introducing a machine. Okay, this is an asset. Now this machine is used in the production. So you have principal, you have agent, you know that how the outcome Y is determined using the same equation, performance P is determined using the same equation. Now you also need to take care of the machine. So the A1 and A2 choice also affects the resale value of the machine. Okay. So in other words, that A1 and A2 may be that task that is being performed on those machines will have some negative impact on the machine. And as a result, this resale value of the machine will be affected by H1 A1 plus H2 A2 plus Xi. Okay. Xi is again a noise term. So H1 and H2 are the two numbers which are kind of working with the actions taken by the agent, and that is determining the value of the machine. So now, what would be the first base action choice in this context? So in this context, remember performance is of no consequence. Just we are interested in maximizing the value of surplus. And what is that value of surplus in this context? So you have a machine which can be resolved, okay? And you have an output that is generated. So y plus b, so you will try to maximize the expected y plus b minus the cost of actions that the agent will do. So this is we are looking at the first best without taking into any conflict of interest between the two parties in terms of their objective function. So this is the overall surplus, okay? And if we just leave aside the conflict of interest for the time being, then this has to be maximized. So this will give us the first best choices. So first best choices will be A1 first best choice will be F1 plus H1, and A2 first best will be F2 plus H2, okay? Now, in this situation, now we have two different situations to consider. One is, suppose my agent is an employee, which means that I own the machine and then I will resell the machine at the end of the day. I am simply hiring the agent to be an employee in my organization and perform the task assigned to it, and the tasks essentially will be the choices of two actions, A1 and A2, okay? So now principal's payoff will be principals own the machine. So it will have y plus v minus amount of wage that it pays to the agent, okay? Because the agent is an employee here. Now agent's payoff will be the hour that it gets, basically the wage it gets minus the cost of taking those two actions, okay? So how the agents will choose its actions? So agent's optimal action as an employee will be A1 star, that will be G1B, and A2 star will be G2B. Now this W, remember that we are using the performance on which we are writing this contract W. So S plus BP is the contract. W is equal to S plus BP, okay? Y has a separate relation with A1 and A2. V has a separate relations with A1 and A2. So W is essentially written based on the performance which is observable, and the performance we know is related to G1 A1 plus G2 A2, okay? And from there we are able to get how much will be the choice of optimal level of actions for the employee, for the agent as an employee, okay? So these two, and then based on these two choices, I will be able to look at what would be my total surplus. Now my total surplus will be that not only the output, but also the value, resale value of the machine. So F1 plus H1 into A1 star B plus F2 plus H2 A2 star B minus the cost of these choices. So this will be the total surplus under the relationship that my agent is acting as an employee for me. Okay, clear? Now I can simply do another type of contracting, which is that I will not take any responsibility of this machine or reselling this machine. So I will not own the machine. I will hire the agent who owns the machine. Okay. Now, if I hire the agent and this agent owns the machine, so essentially the agent now is no longer an employee because it comes with the asset on which the work has to be completed. So it is a contractor. So I am giving the contract to the contractor that you perform this overall task, and I am interested in the overall performance. Okay. And I do not give you machine or anything. You bring your own machine, and then you do the activity. So typically you can think of that. Suppose you want to build a house, you just give a promoter a builder who actually builds the house. You do not take any responsibility. Okay. And then you sign a contract with the builder. Okay. So now in this particular situation, when agent is a contractor, then agent will be getting the resale value of the machine. So not only based on performance, it is some award scheme. So that is W, which is S plus BP, plus B will be the resale value of the machine minus the cost C. Okay. Now the contractor choice of action as a contractor will be A1 C star, And if you maximize these by plugging the value of C, which is half A1 square and half A2 square, okay, plus half A2 square. So you will be able to get A1 C star, which will be equal to G1B plus H1, and A2 C star equal to G2B plus H2. Okay. So this gives you the choices of actions by the contractor. But remember, these choices are very different from the choices that you have been looking here. Okay. So these choices are different. Okay. Now, what does the different choices means? That now the incentive to choose different levels of A1 is not only coming from the incentive that is given as B in this performance-based payment structure, but also on the owning of the machine. So the H1 is also entering into this choice of action by the contractor. Okay. So the owning of the machine is also influencing the incentive of the contractor to choose the level of action. Okay. Now our target is to see that in this particular two different alternatives that the principal has. In one situation, it is owning the machine and hiring the agent as a contractor. On the other hand, it is just giving the contractor the full liberty in terms of Sneha, I will get back to you. Just let me complete the sentence. So as a contractor, it is now will be choosing different actions, and based on that, the total surplus of the in the relationship will be defined. So this is my total surplus, Y plus V minus C. But the only thing that is different is that based on that, the contractor is now owning the machine, is essentially choosing different levels of A1 C star and A2 C star. Okay. And I'll be able to define the overall surplus. Yes, Sneha, tell me.
So in this model, are we assuming that H1 and H2 are negative? Like, will the action chosen by the contractor will always be less than the actions chosen by an employee?
No, I am not assuming anything on H1 and H2. H1 and H2 can be positive or negative. I am not talking about anything. I am simply saying that this is giving you a different incentive. Okay. Of the actions that you will be choosing as the agent, as a contractor.
All right.
So you are very true in terms of raising this question that whether we can take H1 and H2 to be positive all the time. No, it could be that H1 is negative, but H2 is positive. So we do not know. We are simply saying that the value of the machine at the end of the day will depend on the combination of the two task level of actions that is undertaken by the agent. Okay. And that resale value will determine on that. But one thing you have to remember, that given that we are assuming that there's a resale value of the machine B, we are still not thinking that there is a disposability problem. So B, we are implicitly assuming B greater than 0, but we are not imposing any condition on separately on H1 and H2. Okay. So we are simply thinking that there is a resale value of the machine which is positive, but H1 can be negating, H2 could be positive. Okay. So that way it is possible and still giving me a positive figure as B. Okay. So now this is my total surplus under the contract that my agent is a contractor who owns the machine and it will enjoy the resale value of the machine. And that's how it will be organized. The production will be organized. Okay. So I have now two different scenarios. One is where my agent is an employee, and another situation where my agent is a contractor. So now I will be able to again choose my B component to maximize here, similarly B component to maximize here. Okay. And then after plugging that B value, and I know that corresponding to B value, my actions will also change. So then I'll be able to compare these two. Okay, that which one is giving me greater payoff. Okay. And based on that, the principal will choose whether to employ the agent as an employee or give the contract to the agent as a contractor so that it comes with its own machine and perform the task, and the principal doesn't have anything to do with the machine. Okay, clear? Clear? Now these are some of the different possibilities, and these possibilities are with respect to that whether so these functions can be taking the shape, say, suppose y is only dependent on a1 and b is only dependent on a2. So in other words, this is the task which is helping you to realize the output, but there is an additional task which is, say, in terms of taking care of the machine A2. And so although if you just handle it carefully, it might have, it would not have any effect on the output level, but it will have effect on the resale value of the machine. Okay, so but for the agent's attention, it has to take both the actions, A1 and A2. Okay, so these are competing action from the point of view of the agent. And now me being the principal, I am able to see this performance, which is A1 plus A2. Okay. Sorry. So now think of another example where y equal to A1 and b equal to A2, and performance is just simply based on A1. Okay. So now if I just try to now think that what would be the best option in the case of example 1, what would be the best option in the case of example 2. Now in example 1, P is perfectly aligned with y plus v. Y plus v means A1 plus A2, and that is perfectly aligned with the performance A1 plus A2. Okay, so in this case, principal can induce the agent to choose fast-paced action if the principal owns the asset and the agent receives a contract with slope B star equal to 1. So is it clear that if principal wants the asset, then what the principal at the end of the day will be the Y that it gets plus B, the resale value of the machine. So A1 plus A2, what the principal would be interested in, and that is perfectly reflected in the performance P, which is A1 plus A2. Okay. So in that case, the B can be exactly equal to 1, so that you fully incentivize based on this performance, because me being principal, I am interested in maximizing the A1 plus A2. Okay. Now, in the example 2, P is perfectly aligned with Y. Okay. So performance is A1, Y equal to A1. Okay. So we are only, so the principal is interested in A1, and if it makes a contract which is based on this performance P, and that has direct link with the outcome variable Y, and principal will be interested in maximizing that. So in this case, the agent can be acting as a contractor and will own the machine. Okay, so the principal doesn't own the machine, and principal, by simply giving BC star equal to 1, that means giving full OS to this performance, because that helps in terms of maximizing its own payoff Y. Okay, the outcome that it is interested in. So in this case, BC star will be equal to 1. So that's the example 2, where the agent should act as a contractor. Okay, clear? Any question? So now you can see in this simple example that the incentive view of multitask principal agent problem, how that can be thought of as a theory of firm or theory of organization, where the organization's job is to decide about the boundary of it, so whether to organize something internally or to buy something from the market. Now, in case of organizing something internally, the principal, that basically the owner of the organization, will be owning the machine. Okay, and that's the story of agent will be treated as an employee. On the other hand, I can simply just give the contract out the whole activity to a contractor who will own the machine, and I will be interested in getting my own outcome Y. Okay, so this is how the incentive, simple principal agent multitask incentive problem can be thought of as a theory of organization. Okay, so that's, as I told you again and again, that this incentive system theory is pretty sophisticated, but it was not meant to solve the or rationalize the theory of firm, but later on the scholars realized that it has great value for for determining the boundary of the firm in terms of how much it is easy or difficult to solve the incentive problem within organization vis-a-vis outside the organization. Okay, so this contractor and employee story is the simplest way to drive home this point.